Sanna Marin, Finland's Prime Minister from 2019 to 2023, has written Hope in Action, a memoir about the courage to lead. This memoir provides a first-hand account of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the deadliest and longest war in Europe since World War II, with over 500,000 military casualties by mid-2025. As a leader of a nation sharing an 830-mile border with Russia, Marin's perspective reveals the decision-making processes of world leaders during the war's onset and Europe's response. Her memoir illuminates the conflict's origins and the immediate reactions of European nations, particularly Finland and the EU, despite their heavy reliance on Russian energy. Marin's memoir details the Russia-Ukraine conflict's roots, which began long before Russia's full-scale invasion on February 22. The conflict traces back to Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and support for separatists in Donbass, escalating through failed Minsk II agreements. Marin, as Finland's leader, engaged in diplomatic talks with Russian and Western leaders, witnessing the breakdown of trust. Her book includes vivid accounts of pre-war intelligence, such as Russia's troop buildup of over 100,000 soldiers by late 2021, and failed de-escalation attempts like the Normandy format talks. Marin describes the invasion as unprovoked aggression driven by Russia's imperial ambitions, with Putin's February 22 recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk as a pretext for war. Her memoir captures the emotional and strategic weight of these moments, offering a young leader's perspective, elected from a working-class background, on the moral outrage over civilian targeting in places like Bucha and Mariupol. On February 22, as Russian missiles hit Kiev, Europe's response was swift and unified, shattering decades of post-Cold War complacency. The EU activated Article 42.7, its mutual defense clause, for the first time. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz halted Nord Stream 2 and committed €100 billion to defense, reversing its pacifist stance. France's Emmanuel Macron condemned the invasion as brutal, while the UK, under Boris Johnson, sent anti-tank weapons to Ukraine. Nordic and Baltic nations, including Finland, acted decisively. Marin tweeted solidarity before dawn and joined virtual summits to manage the influx of over 4 million Ukrainian refugees. By February 25, the EU froze €300 billion in Russian central bank assets and banned oligarchs, followed by swift exclusions for Russian banks. These actions reflected a recognition that the war threatened Europe's democratic order and security, unlike any regional rivalry since 1945. The Russia-Ukraine War, unlike typical European disputes, became a grueling conflict with trench warfare in Donbass and drone strikes on civilian infrastructure. It evoked memories of World War II, with frontline nations like Finland and Poland viewing Ukraine as a buffer against Russian expansion. Marin's memoir highlights Finland's historic shift to NATO membership, applied for in May 2022 and achieved rapidly, driven by fears of Russian aggression along its 1,340-kilometer border. The war's scale, marked by atrocities and massive displacement, pushed Europe to prioritize long-term security over short-term stability, reshaping NATO's defense commitments, with 23 allies meeting the 2% GDP spending target by 2024. Before the invasion, the EU relied on Russia for 40% of its gas and 27% of its oil, with Finland nearly fully dependent for electricity and significant gas and oil imports via pipelines like Baltic Connector. This dependence posed risks. Energy prices surged 400% in 2022, causing inflation and blackout threats in Finland. Yet, Marin's government cut Russian electricity imports by May 2022, pivoting to Norwegian and US LNG. The EU followed, reducing Russian gas imports to under 8% by 2023 through renewables and alternative suppliers. Marin's memoir details the strategic calculus, Russia's weaponization of energy, including suspected Nord Stream sabotage, showed dependence was unsustainable. Supporting Ukraine aligned with self-interest, preventing Russian dominance, protecting democratic values, and avoiding further aggression toward nations like Moldova. The EU committed €100 billion in aid by 2025, including weapons and reconstruction, with sanctions escalating from luxury goods bans to oil embargoes and G7 price caps by December 2022. Sanna Marin's Hope in Action offers a unique window into the Russia-Ukraine conflict's origins and Europe's response. It captures the urgency of diplomatic failures, the moral imperative to act, and the strategic shift to back Ukraine despite economic pain. Marin's account, praised by NATO's Jens Stoltenberg as a compelling record of pivotal moments, reveals the human side of leadership, fear, resolve, and solidarity, in a crisis that redefined Europe's security. For historians and readers, the memoir is a vital resource for understanding how leaders navigated the war's early days and why Europe chose to stand with Ukraine, transforming its energy and defense policies in the process.